You are all live now.
Okay. All right, guys, we'll go ahead and start here. We got a couple people that are logging on as well. And so we'll call to order here. We'll do a roll call. And again, I believe Commissioner Ramp is trying to log on as we speak right now. So we can go ahead and get started with Commissioner Tobias from the first CD.
Present.
Okay. Commissioner Anthony from the second.
Present. Present.
Commissioner McClellan already notifies that she won't be here today. Commissioner Rangel, I'll just see him. Just saw him come on here.
Hello, present.
All right. And Commissioner Ramp will be coming on in a little bit here. Commissioner Prentice from the sixth.
Present.
Okay. Commissioner Bertonet, I don't see him as of yet. And Commissioner Phillips.
Present.
Okay. So thanks for everyone for coming in for today. We wanted to go over a couple things here. Moon and Liz are here with us today as well. We'll kind of talk to us about some things having to do with contiguity as well, ask some questions. But before we went into that, the next item is our open meetings overview. Jack, I don't know if you want to hop on here.
We are going to have Ryan Nilsestoon from my office give a presentation. He is here and his video is on.
I see him. Perfect.
Oops. Great. Thanks, everybody. So I think I've met most of you before. For those of you who don't remember me, my name is Ryan Nilsestoon. I'm Governor Evers' Chief Legal Counsel. And one of my many hats I get to wear in this job is I usually do trainings and just updates for people in terms of compliance with Wisconsin's sunshine laws. So we have, as most of you probably know, we have two sunshine laws in the state. We have the public records law, which is the one that usually gets the most notice because it tends to be the one that gets litigated the most and tends to be the one that's most active. So that's what allows people to request records. So as you all know, the emails and everything that you all are doing is subject to the public records law, and anybody can request copies of that as long as the request is reasonably specific. The other law, and what I want to do just a quick run through with you today is just a refresher on the open meetings law in terms of what it requires of all of us. And then if we have, I think we'll do, if you have any questions, just raise your hand and I'll try and answer it. But otherwise, we'll try and make this quick and to the point. So basically, the open meetings law, the main thing that it does is it requires governmental bodies to provide the public with adequate notice anytime they have a meeting. So there's a couple key words that I use there. So one is so it only applies to governmental bodies. 2 is adequate notice, and 3 is meetings. So I'll just go through briefly what those are, especially the meetings part, because I think that's the part that really trips people up the most. So governmental bodies, the People's Maps Commission is a governmental body. So governmental bodies, any state or local agency, board, commission, council, or department created by the Constitution, statute, ordinance, rule, or in your case, an order. So an executive order is what created the People's Maps Commission when the governor issued that. So it means that the open meetings law applies to the work that you do. Other examples, you know, it's everything from school boards to agencies to the governor's office. It applies to all of us. So that one's pretty straightforward. There's no question about whether or not it applies to you. The part that gets a little bit more tricky for folks is a meeting. So what actually constitutes a meeting? And so there's 2 things that constitute when a meeting occurs. And that's, you know, whenever members of a governmental body convene to engage in government business and there are enough members present to determine a course of action. And so to kind of break that down a little bit, that's, you know, anytime that you're discussing the People's Maps Commission work, you know, that is engaging in governmental business. It's one thing just to have kind of back and forth, especially between 1 or 2 members. But when you have a quorum present, you know, whether that's at a coffee shop, on a Zoom meeting, or on an email chain, and there's enough people present to determine a course of action, and you're actually discussing the People's Maps Commission's work, that would constitute a meeting. So things that I always advise people just to be very mindful of is there's one way that can trip people up is what's called a walking quorum. And that's where, for example, if Chairman Ford, I know he hasn't done this, but if called up each of you and say, hey, how are you going to vote on this? I think you should vote this way, and went one by one in order to line up the votes. That's called a walking quorum. That's prohibited. What gets a little bit trickier and what I can't provide very clear guidance on, because there haven't been any court decisions that I'm aware of on this, but it's just something to still be smart about, is in terms of electronic communications. So it's very clear that this Zoom meeting, for example, is a meeting. That's why we did a open meetings notice on it. But what gets trickier is, for example, text chains have tripped people up before, email chains where you have at least a quorum on there. And what a court most likely would look at is just what kind of communication you're having. So it's one thing, for example, if Chairman Ford said, here's the agenda for next week's meeting, this is what we'll be talking about, here are some reminders, that doesn't fall under the open meetings law. But if, for example, Commissioner Tobias, if you said, I think would rather we have this agenda on it, and then Commissioner Anthony says, I agree, and you go around the circle and everybody starts agreeing, that all of a sudden is starting to look like you're voting on it. And then that would be an open meeting. So that's when we have to be careful in terms of, it's one thing to provide feedback, but the reply all function can cause some trouble. And just pause, think for a second. Are you trying to direct government business by doing reply all? And that's where you need to be mindful that it's probably best just to pause and wait until the next meeting to discuss it, or just replying back directly. Because if you're just replying back directly to it, it's not going to be an open meetings notice violation. So just take a moment to think before you hit the reply all on that. And then the final thing of those three items I mentioned at the beginning is notice. So staff takes care of that part for the most part. So I know after Chairman Ford has put an agenda together, after everybody's agreed to an agenda, DOA, the People's Maps Commission, is attached to the Department of Administration. Molly Vidal works to make sure that it's adequately noticed. So we make sure it's posted both online and physically, to make sure that it complies with the open meetings law. So basically we have to give a heads up. What I always tell folks is, if my aunt is looking at the notice, she should be able to understand what the meeting is going to be. So that needs to be, all of the action items need to be noticed. People need to know how they can participate in it. And they need to have access to it at least 24 hours ahead of time. Our practice with People's Maps Commission is we do notice well ahead of that time. So we never have to worry about the 24-hour notice. So those were just kind of I know that was quite a bit of information to go through quickly, but I think everybody's doing a very good job of that in terms of making sure that we're being very open and transparent. That's why we live stream these things. That's why we do open meetings notices. But I do want to just make sure that everybody's on the same page with that. And if you do have any questions or concerns, Jack Iblis, send him an email, and we would be, we'll make sure that everything is being done properly if you do have a question. But just wanted to make sure you all had information on that so that we're doing best practices going forward. Any quick questions? Otherwise, like I said, just email Jack and we'll get back to you.
Thanks, Ryan. Any
Sounds
questions?
good. Thanks, everyone.
Yep. All right, guys. So the next item on the agenda is updates from MGGG. So feel free, Moo.
All right. Hi, everyone. I want to tell you a little bit about how things look on our end and come to you with some questions about next steps. In particular, we're really thinking hard about contiguity and how to represent your working definition of contiguity in Districtr so that the software matches your criteria and your expectations. So to bring you a little bit up to speed on our thinking on that, let me start by saying it's been interesting for us to watch the situation evolve in other states as well. So Wisconsin has an excellent election data infrastructure and has really great data provided at the ward level. And then also at a higher level called ward groups, that group several wards together, just like the name sounds like. And as you know, if you've been playing around in Districtr at all, which I hope you have, many of those wards in Wisconsin are themselves disconnected, right? And some states that's the case more than other states. Often it has to do with the histories of municipal incorporation and just kind of flukes of the deep history with which those precincts or wards were created. So another state that has a large number of disconnected wards, especially in its cities, like Wisconsin, is Ohio. And just this morning, I attended a meeting of the Michigan Independent Citizens Redistricting Commission, in which they had done a mapping exercise in Ohio. Sorry, I know this is complicated. We have a lot of states flying around. But the Michigan commissioners did a mapping exercise where they all tried to redistrict Ohio. They turned in their draft maps. I was one of the people giving them feedback on their draft maps. And then they were asked, what was hard about this? And every person who responded said, those discontiguous precincts were driving me crazy. And so we've been thinking about ways to address this on our end. Let me share my screen and just show you an example and give you a sense of the extent of this in Wisconsin. So here's a quick image. Can everybody see that? Great, which shows some of what we're facing. So this is what you'd call an example of a ward with a hole. This one you'd call disconnected. This one's both disconnected and has holes. And this one is neither. This is a nice vanilla ward, all one piece and no holes. And of the 7,076 non-island wards, over 1,000 of them are either disconnected, have holes, or both. That is quite a significant share. So more than 1 in 7 wards will have one of these kind of quirky attributes. And so the reason I bring that up is to say that when you think about the building blocks that are available to you in Districtr as you draw, here's something that will often happen just anecdotally when people draw from disconnected pieces. They'll select a ward, and then because they don't want the appearance of island pieces, they'll take all the ones necessary to contain all the pieces, and then take all the ones necessary to contain all those pieces. And this can be a domino effect, causing you to keep large areas together just to preserve appearances. Am I making sense? Do you see what I mean by that? Okay. And so this really is truly a question for you. We've been thinking about that on your behalf and want to ask you about a few possibilities for how you might want to handle that. So one possibility is to try to create connected super wards, like larger units that actually are all connected so that they don't constrain you or give visual shards while you draw. So we could create super wards, if you see what I mean by that. Another possibility is that we can try to split the wards into their pieces, but that's a little bit tricky because when you have election results reported at a higher level, if you try to split those down to the lower levels, you have to do some statistical inference, and that will introduce some inaccuracy, right? And you need election results if you want to think about things like competitiveness and proportionality, partisan fairness in all of its instantiations. One other thing that's possible is where you have a ward with multiple pieces, you can take all of its votes and assign it to the largest piece and visually dissolve the other pieces into their surroundings. Does that option make sense? Do you see what I mean by that? Right, so maybe there's 3 pieces, but one of them is biggest. We could assign all the votes from that ward to the biggest piece and then melt the others into their surroundings so that what's visible to you in the tool doesn't present this disconnectedness problem. Tony.
Yeah, 2 questions just to clarify. Where is that data coming from that you're using? What year? And 2, I guess, to really back up, why would a ward have a hole? Why are they disconnected in the first place?
Yeah, so I mentioned that this sometimes has to do with, municipal boundaries and municipal annexation. So sometimes a ward historically might have been formed by taking unincorporated areas from a region and grouping them together. That's a frequent history that caused there to be a disconnected ward. And sometimes it happens, around the country, it is the norm that municipalities themselves have holes in them. If I remember right, the city of Austin has like 9 holes in it. Just for example. But it's very frequent around the country, and it just has to do with kind of the legal definitions of the municipalities. And
So they're
some-
not part of Austin. So these holes in Austin are not part of Austin.
Exactly.
But,
And so-
but the holes and the disconnect have nothing to do with partisan stuff.
No, they weren't done for any partisan reasons. Surely, definitely. I think you can be very confident about that. But it poses this kind of problem for us. And actually, here's a fun fact for you. We had our team counting the number of holes in wards, and you guys in your fine state have wards with 1, 2, 3, 4, and up to 70. I'm not kidding. There's a ward with 70 holes in Wisconsin. So this is not a like kind of fringe problem. This is definitely something you're going to face when you draw. Ruben?
Sure. And maybe you can finish your explanation there, but I didn't understand that third example you gave where you would have wards in multiple pieces and then you would assign the votes into one big ward and then assign votes to the surrounding. Conceptually, I just can't get that.
Sure. Let's see if I can. When I cede the floor, I'll make an example, and then if you come back to me, I'll make an example in Districtr and show it to you. But if I try to build it in real time, bad things will happen. But it's a great question. I'll build an example and circle back to it.
Okay.
And so I think all of the solutions that I've just described are probably fine from the point of view, none of this is data malpractice, in my opinion, as a data scientist. But we do need guidance from you about how you'd like to handle this. And of course, a solution is always do nothing about it, because you can decide, and it has been the case historically in Wisconsin, that discontiguity of a district is permitted if it's caused by discontiguity of wards. So you can decide it's okay to have the visual appearance of like scattered islands because the reason for it is from keeping wards whole, if you see what I'm saying. Okay, so just to repeat the options are do nothing and, live with the appearance of disconnectedness or discontiguity. That's one. Try to merge them together into larger connected pieces, which gives you a little less flexibility about how you draw, but it doesn't involve any data manipulation. You just aggregate them up into connected pieces. Try to statistically disaggregate the votes to the pieces, which will introduce some error, but it will give you a larger number of connected pieces. Or the last option is assign all the votes to the biggest piece and like melt away the smaller ones into their surroundings.
Howard, go ahead.
Moon, it might be easier to select a favored response here. This is all probably a little esoteric for everybody. It might be interesting to know how this particular matter was handled in the past.
Well,
Particularly,
in the past in Wisconsin, it's been the first choice, which is that discontiguity is okay if it's caused by discontiguity of the wards.
okay, so can one assume that if that choice is made by the commission, that it won't compare unfavorably, period?
It won't compare unfavorably to the rules in the past, but the public optics may not be ideal.
But if the public looks at the commission having done this, and it also looks at the legislature, it's going to see the same issue?
You can even point to the rule on the books that has allowed this in the past. It's really just that's why I'm also trying to be mindful of a supporting role. And so I'm happy to give you some of the pros and cons of these choices. But ultimately, it's of course very important for you to deliberate. If you feel indifferent, if the commission feels indifferent to the optics of stray pieces, then that's the status quo, and I think that's totally acceptable. I'm not presenting to you any option that I would be uncomfortable with.
Thanks.
I'm not confused anymore, because really you're talking about the visual representation of, okay, so I get it. So I thought you were talking about creating the actual districts, and I'm like, I can't follow that, but from a mapping perspective, I'm fine.
And I will still make an example to show you in a moment.
Yeah, I was looking on some of the, it's the LTSB open data page, just to kind of get a visual of what had been done in the past. And I kind of see what you're saying by some of it. We can wait for the visual too that you're going to provide for us as well.
I would just say, just to update you on our progress. So we're continuing to get lots of interest from folks in Wisconsin who are drawing their communities and starting to draw districts and districter. We're getting a lot of requests for training sessions coming from Wisconsin. So just to keep you apprised, things seem to be moving along healthily in terms of your public outreach and the mapping effort. And before I go and try to make some examples, do you all have any other questions for me? Anything else that's come up that you want input on or feedback on?
I would just say that later we're going to review the criteria, and under contiguity, it does say discontinuity is allowed when wards themselves are not contiguous.
That's right.
So right now we are in the position of that first.
Exactly. And so that's the status quo. But I think before doing this inventory that I just reported to you, I had underestimated just how common that was. And now that I see it's more than 1 in 7 wards are affected, that made me want to raise it again.
That's fair.
Moon, maybe a silly question, but who would fix the ward issue? Is that a legislature fixes that? Who would fix that if it were?
Well, let's see. So that's a fix that we could execute on our end, but I'd like to coordinate with your chief election officer, Megan Wolf, before making any kind of data decisions of what to present you. But that's the office that puts out all the great ward data that they do. They really do an excellent job. They put lots of historical election data joined to a single set of geographic units. So they really do a great job, but that's definitely the office that information flows through.
Any other questions you guys have before? Moon, do you know how long it'll take you to throw it up, or do you want to
I'll have it within 3 minutes, but you should carry on to your next item. I'll raise my hand when I'm ready to show you an example.
No, we just want to be respectful of your time. We appreciate you coming out. So I guess one of the next things that we can go over quickly is we had a new business section, and I just wanted to touch base with Maddie here to see if she had any updates for us.
Thank you. Yes, couple quick things just to provide you all updates on after our conversation a couple weeks ago. The one right off the bat, I wanted to make sure everyone saw the email I sent around today requesting a response on Doodle. I know some of y'all have gotten back to me already. I appreciate that. For the next public hearing, which we're working to schedule the week of the 12th. We're looking at Monday, Tuesday, or Thursday evening that week. So if you could just get me a response by the end of the day, Thursday, that would be excellent. And then we'll send around that invite. And then the next two other things. One, we're working to set up Train the Trainer either the week of the 12th following the public hearing or the week after, TBD, but we'll get back to you all on dates and make sure that folks have some options. We're just working to make sure dates work best with MGGG and their teams there. And then we'll have some materials for you all to push out to, as you might remember, I sent around maybe a month ago at this point, maybe a little bit less, 3 weeks ago or so, contact list separated by CD for everyone who has either has contacted the commission in any way, whether that's providing verbal testimony, written, etc., segmented out by CD. So you all have a list of about I think some of them are close to 200, but somewhere between 100 and 200 constituents per in your CD that have interacted with the commission that we'd love to invite to the Train the Trainer event. And we have a draft email for you as well. So we'll circulate all that information once we have the date on the Train the Trainer. And if you all can send out that email to your constituents, that would be excellent. And then the last thing quick is just an update on the website. Our web team has been hard at work over the past couple of weeks, putting together some really excellent and exciting changes. And to tease out a couple of them for your awareness, I'm thinking we're going to be ready to launch these changes in the next day or two. Is the work and records page, which is a really exciting update. One, it's going to include links to all of the hearings directly there so folks can go back and listen to the verbal testimony. Two, it's going to include a link to the written testimony, which is exciting. And obviously that is up to date through all of the CD hearings that we've had. And that is great. It's really kind of like choppy and raw, but it's exciting and interesting to be able to see that the written testimony from everyone, which is, I think we have close to almost 800 comments in there, which is excellent. What else is going to be on that page? Exciting things. We're going to do some tweaks to the homepage, including amplifying the link to draw maps. That'll be right on the homepage now. We're updating the glossary with some new definitions provided by MGGG that will be credited to them, and then will just be kind of the working definitions for the commission, including the COI definition that Commissioner Prentice wrote, and that you all will be discussing later, I think. Oh man, what were there's some other exciting stuff on there too. Oh, we're also just working on the education page. I don't know if y'all have had time to kind of really dig into the website, but on the education page, we'll be providing links to each of the YouTube clip of the expert testimonies, so folks can kind of go directly to those and see who has testified for you all over the past 6 months or so. And then we just have like the statistics and metrics that you all have accomplished, the amount of folks you've spoken to, which is really incredible, counties and municipalities that you've reached. So I think that kind of covers it. They're going to the updates are going to go in waves, because some of them are bigger than others, but the work and records, I believe, will be released, like I said, in the next couple days. The homepage and the education updates are to come in the next few weeks. But I will stop there. Any questions or need anything else from me?
No, that sounds great,
Awesome.
man. Thanks so much. And then Molly sent out some of the summary statements in the one pager into phase 1 too. So you guys feel free to distribute those as widely as you can, and all that will go hand in hand with what we got. So awesome. Thanks, Manny.
Excellent. The last thing I meant to say, sorry, the written comments, because of the rate at which they're coming in at this point, much slower, obviously, than when we were in the actual hearings. They're going to be updated every 2 weeks at this point. So if you get any questions from constituents about the rate, that's also acknowledged on the website. But if you do get any questions, that's as frequently as I'll be updating them. And I'll put, this is up to date as of March 31st or whatever, in case people have questions on that. And of course, it's all subject to open records anyway, so we can release them whenever people need them. But just for my own sanity, it'll be every 2 weeks.
Perfect.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Maddie. All right, Moon, you have your hand raised now.
Yeah, so let me show you just a quick example, but you can basically find this in more or less any city or large town. So here we are near Appleton. And if we try to draw, so you see this in blue, that's one ward. Yeah, so we have some history of cast votes for this object. And so it's pretty disconnected. And if you were drawing around here, you might be tempted to just keep adding to it to sort of start to make it look visually connected. And so one of the things that I've been finding as I play around is that when you start to do that, it can have a domino effect. And now just by sort of filling in holes, it can start to get bigger and bigger until what started with one ward is now quite sizable. So, this here, if I switch colors, you can see that's another word. And so the same thing's going to start to happen. And if you're chasing the visual appearance, it can start to force your hand, and you can be grabbing more and more of these at a time. Is that helpful, Ruben? You see what I mean? Okay, great.
Yes, thank you.
All right, so with that, I'll just say, I want to congratulate you, Maddie. The website looks great, and I know a number of other states are looking to yours as a model. Again, as usual, things look really good. If you have any other questions for me and Liz, we can stick around a little bit longer.
Well, I have a question. Do you anticipate like bigger maps coming out at, like with some congressional districts or districts using the 2019 ward block data, anything that you're anticipating showing us in the next month or two, or what are your thoughts?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So our benchmark is, now that everything's up and running, we're hoping to be seeing at least 100 new maps submitted a month. That's our benchmark for what we'd like to be seeing. And so some have come in. Many of the ones that from the last update that I heard from our lab, many of the ones that we've seen are partial. So I think people are still learning how to complete a map. But we're starting to also, at our Train the Trainers sessions, which we host every Monday and Wednesday, we've started to devote Wednesdays to hands-on breakout rooms, come and leave with a map. So in other words, now we're starting to get some repeat clients, and people are getting more and more comfortable drawing maps. So I think we'll see an accelerating rate of map submission. And yeah, I look forward to showing you what some of those look like and giving you some evaluations. I also encourage you to start drawing. And just, if you're not comfortable practicing in Wisconsin, which I would totally understand because that feels high stakes, grab another state and practice in another state. But the process of completing a districting plan with population balance and all the other criteria in mind is going to start to make, practice makes perfect, and you'll start to feel more and more comfortable as you do.
I guess my question though was related to what you're doing with the ward block data and the census delay.
Yeah.
I thought there was discussion of using prior data to give us some potential maps to start looking at that we would tweak later and
that's the hope.
Be able to talk about to people.
Yes, absolutely. But so the hope is, we see our role as a supporting role. And so our hope is that you'll start drawing, and then you'll let us give you feedback on your maps. That's sort of down the road. Ultimately, you'll also have a mapping consultant, possibly a student, who's going to come and tune your maps once the official numbers are out. I have a little update on that, by the way, on when that will happen. But really, what needs to happen is to get you guys started and try, the privacy of your own boudoir, draw yourself some maps. But the more you start practicing, the sort of that kicks off the process, which I've always seen as an iterative process, where you'll draw maps, get feedback, draw new maps, and so on. And what we'll be able to do is tell you strengths and weaknesses of your maps by the lights of your criteria. And so actually, if you're interested, I could show you some of the mapping exercise that the Michigan commissioners did in Ohio. I'd be happy to show you some of that, give you a sense of what that looks like. You do that now or at a future meeting. But really, I'm here partly as a cheerleader to say, give it a try your hand, draw. Right, update on the census data quickly. So I don't think we've discussed the latest news yet, which is, so as you all may remember, the Bureau announced the last day of September, which I guess is September 30th, as their target date for when the official population data would be released. There was like a little bit of a bombshell in redistricting world in the last couple of weeks, because a somewhat mysterious missive from the Bureau said that actually there'd be data out in mid-August. And then everybody was scrambling to figure out what that was and how close it was to official and so on. And so I can tell you, having talked to the redistricting data program director at the Bureau, that actually what's out in mid-August is going to be the official correct, finalized PL 94-171 population data. The data you can take to the bank is going to be out in mid-August now, not late September. The 6 weeks in between then and the September 30th release date are being used by the Bureau on their user interface tools, so that there'll be a browser, based page you can go to and look up the population of your, municipality or your county. So all the data is available to people who are able to use, large data frames. All the data is available, and that includes us. Data is available in August, so you'll be able. That moves things up a little bit, the timeline, and I think what I hope is welcome news. You'll be able to tune those maps that you've been drawing and make them perfect to your specifications by the middle of August.
When we decide on the map, I guess the trainer event that we're going to have for our group, would it be possible for you to show us some of that data before that the other states are doing?
Absolutely.
Yeah, great.
Yeah, I'll send you some of the reports on the mapping exercise that just came out of Michigan. It's all public record, like your work. Their work is all public record.
Sounds great. Awesome. Any other questions for Moon while we got her here, guys? And Liz too, sorry. Liz. All right.
All right, well, it's nice to see you all. Have a great night.
All right, guys. So what we'll do is we'll kind of spin this into our working groups meeting updates. And so I saved the line draws for the very end because Tony is going to go over with us some of the criterion document so we can kind of go through it. So I guess the first one we'll start out with here would just be with communications and outreach. Ben and Liz, do you guys have any updates for us at this point? We kind of talked about the website here, but yeah.
No, I think, I don't think anything comes to mind. I know Molly's doing a lot of good work creating resources for us, holding down the Twitter. I talked to Jack, and it's on Molly's agenda too in terms of getting any resources we end up distributing, making sure they get translated along the line at some point. That's something that's been brought up kind of consistently, so that non-English speakers and readers can follow our work. But we didn't meet as an outreach committee or anything since our last working meeting or congressional district hearing.
Awesome. No worries. Yeah, it looks like we're getting some traction there anyway, so sounds great. As far as the COI committee, Melissa, do you guys have anything?
Not a lot. We haven't met as a committee. However, we did have a meeting last week. Anne Marie and I did with Molly and Maddie and to go over the COI definition in our criteria document to just kind of pull that together, polish it up, make it clearer, and that's now included in the document and was modeled primarily on Michigan's COI definition. So that's really it.
Awesome. I was reaching out to a couple of stakeholders as well over the last week, a couple of days. It's kind of rapid fire, and that was one of the things that we got to a lot is what is a community of interest and things like that. And so I think that'll be very helpful to send out too. So great, awesome. All right. As far as the expert selection, I don't see anything that we have in the interim right now, Susan. So, I mean, maybe when we get towards more so of a selection phase for reviewing some of our data, we can kind of go from that route. But I don't know, do you have anything else at this point? Or no? Yeah. The Rubens kind of same thing applies for our lessons learned too. We can touch base as soon as we get more of a product here. So, so we can go ahead and go right into, I guess, the meat of the discussion here. So, Tony, I can turn it over to you there.
Okay.
You want to share your screen too, right? Yeah.
What's that?
You wanted to share your screen as well?
Well, that's what I'm going to try to do. What are you guys seeing?
I got you. Yep, we got you.
Does it say what is redistricting?
Yep.
Is everybody see it? Okay. So let me just set this up. What I tried to do was what's in black is copy and pasted directly from Anne Marie's document. So I didn't change any of that. That's just copy and pasted directly. What's in red was my thoughts, you know, but obviously we need all your thoughts. And just going into this, I guess I would say, you know, Anne Marie's done a great job. I think she's writing this for the public, for people that don't do this like we've been doing it. So that's where I think some of the balance needs is, you know, to have it be simple enough for the public, but yet professional looking is kind of where I was at. So those are the comments that we need to be looking for. And by the way, you know, Anne Marie's not here. So to be fair to her, I had thought maybe we would be doing this next week, but my understanding is we're doing it tonight. So that's fine, as long as everybody's okay with that. But that didn't come from me. Okay. So we'll just jump into it, and you can either follow this, or you know, hopefully I sent you an email today and you got that. But so what is redistricting? I didn't have any changes to the first paragraph. Redistricting is the process, Does anybody want to offer any comments or changes on the first two sentences? You know, I guess as we do this, if you don't say anything, I'll give it a little bit of delay, and then if we don't hear anything, we'll move on.
Sure.
Okay. So in the second paragraph, you know, this is where there's sort of a conflict between wanting to be relatively easy and readable versus, you know, what's too easy. So in Wisconsin, there are 3 sets of district lines, 99 state assembly districts. The next sentence, according to current population estimates, each assembly district will contain 59,000 people. And then under current law, 3 assembly districts are combined to form 1 Senate district. So, comma, each state Senate district will contain about 177,000 people. I'll stop there. I don't like the word so. It just, you know, that's how we talk in our families, but I didn't like that. So if we go to the revision in red, I rewrote this paragraph. So we can read the revision in red. In Wisconsin, there are 3 sets of district lines. I won't read the rest of that sentence. According to current population estimate, each assembly district will contain about 59,000 people. Next sentence, under current law, 3 assembly districts combined to form 1 Senate district. Each state Senate district will therefore contain about 177,000 people. The 8 congressional districts each contain about 729,000 people. I didn't change the last sentence about the voters in a congressional district. So the change I made was taking out the so, but then you'll see the question I'm asking for the commission. Anne Marie, 3 times she said, will contain about, will contain about. And do we want to leave it like that, or do we want to break that up a bit? You know, we could say, instead of contain about, we could say will encompass approximately, or will consist of, close to, or will include. We don't have to say the same thing each time, or we can.
Well, I'd just say, take the editorial liberty of just changing it up.
Yeah.
Is that what people think? I mean, that's kind of what I think, but I don't want to, you know, if people think it's better to be the way it is, I'm open to that too.
I think it's redundant that way.
Yeah.
My voice matters.
Yeah, of course it does, Ruben. So no, I agree. I think kind of mixing it up will kind of help with the flow of the document as well, and you know, we'll move in the right direction.
So we could leave so each assembly district will contain about 59,000 people. We could leave that. Each state Senate district will therefore encompass? Can I say encompass? Or consist of, or include? How about include? Each state senate district will therefore include approximately. Does that sound all right?
That sounds fine.
Yeah, that's fair.
And then the next sentence, the 8 congressional districts will each contain about you could either leave it or will each consist of or will encompass approximately. I kind of like that, I guess. The 8 congressional districts will encompass approximately, each encompass approximately. I'll just change it and see what you think.
Yeah.
Oh wait, we said that. Around the 8 congressional districts will each encompass around
729,000, yeah.
or about.
Yeah.
Any thoughts on that?
I think around is fine. I don't know. Do you guys have any other? Yeah, I think that's fine.
Okay.
Okay.
So I think we can move on unless there are other people. Okay. The maps are the current maps used in the 2011, 2021 elections. I didn't put the maps in there, so that's why there's kind of a gap there if you're looking at the Anne Marie's. So then we'll go to when is redistricting done? I didn't feel like this sentence was complete, so I revised it and said, redistricting is conducted every 10 years after the United States Census data becomes available and is next due to be completed prior to the 2022 election cycle. But if people like it the way it was, or have other thoughts.
Because I think the second one is complete. I think it kind of is more specific to what we're doing, but you guys have any other thoughts?
Okay. And then that reference is just up there from above. So who creates the district lines? Let's see. I got to move you guys.
I think if you zoom in on it, maybe, I think it'll.
Are you guys seeing yourselves on the right side?
Yeah.
Maybe I'll just minimize you guys there. Now can you see the whole page?
Yeah.
Okay. So who creates the district lines? Again, in black is what was in the draft. The red is potential changes. So the first paragraph, I just put in a few words that needed to be put in. The People's Map Commission was formed in 2020 to produce maps that are fair and free from partisan bias. Didn't change that. The PMC will do this by using line criteria, comma. I put in the word as outlined below. That the PMC formulated after listening to input from the public and experts in redistricting. So I inserted the word in. I think that's pretty straightforward. Unless there's any comment, we'll go to the next paragraph where we do need to make some decisions. So let's just read through it.
Wait, would it be in or on? Sorry to be.
Experts on.
Okay.
Yeah, experts on redistricting or experts in.
I don't know. I'm not that's a grammatical question. I don't know what preposition is supposed to be used there.
I think it's in.
Okay, we're good then.
All right, so we'll leave it. So I did make some changes. We have to talk about the word approve, but even outside that, I did make some changes to the way Anne Marie put it. So we'll just go to the revision here. The Wisconsin State Constitution calls for the state legislature to approve new redistricting maps after the United States Census is complete. I didn't change anything there. Those maps are then sent to the governor for approval. Haven't changed anything yet. Here I changed the next sentence. The PMC will send their maps to the legislature for consideration. I changed that, comma, but the legislature may instead decide to approve other maps. I just changed the order of some words here, but the legislature may instead decide to approve other maps. If the governor does not approve of the map sent by the legislature, the courts may become involved in approving new maps. So here on the bottom paragraph after the question, approve is used 5 times. So we probably got to change that. So
Tony,
who's talking?
it's Howard.
Yeah.
And this is maybe something that I need to ask Jack about, but what you're doing in this paragraph is representing what the Constitution says. And I don't think you're going to find this in the Constitution. At least I didn't. Jack, I don't know if you've ever bothered to read that. It's really very simple in the Constitution.
Yeah, Howard, I've read the Wisconsin Constitution, including these provisions. I talked to Anne Marie about this language. I didn't see a problem with it after talking to Anne Marie. You know, if at some point the commission wants to reach out to a more neutral lawyer, like maybe Mike Van Sicklen at DOA, that might be a good idea. But there's nothing that I find factually untrue about this. The Constitution does call for the legislature to approve maps after the census is complete. It's almost it's a rewording of the exact sentence in the Constitution. Bills that the legislature approve, or I'm sorry, the bills that the legislature passed go to the governor, so that's a fair statement. The PMC is going to send their maps to the legislature for consideration. Again, a fair statement. The legislature can do what they want. Again, it's a fair statement. If the governor does not approve of the maps, the courts will almost 100% get involved, as we heard from our expert testimony. So I've reviewed this language. I think it's appropriate, and I'm going to let the commissioners make their own, judgments from here on out.
Okay.
Okay, so
Thanks.
I did get a suggestion. I want to go back up to the experts in redistricting. I did get a suggestion for saying redistricting experts, as outlined below, that the PMC formulated after listening to input from the public and redistricting experts. And people okay with that?
Yes, perfect.
Okay. So anyway, so I want to go down to this bottom red paragraph that hopefully you see me circling. Potential revision, changing the word approve. So the Wisconsin State Constitution calls for the state legislature to approve new maps after the United States Census is complete. Those maps are then sent to the governor for concurrence. The PMC will send their maps to the legislature for consideration, but the legislature may instead agree upon other maps. I'm not in love with that agree upon, but if the governor does not concur with the maps sent by the legislature, the courts may become involved in the final drawing of the new maps. Now, I would tell you that some of these came from Howard, thank you, as a suggestion. I appreciate that, in terms of what other words to use. Generally, I like this paragraph, the last paragraph, better because we're not saying approve so many times, but I'm looking for input.
Tony, just to clarify, is the desire to reduce the repetition of particular words simply a stylistic preference that you and others may have? Is that, I'm just kind of.
It is. Yeah, I think it is. I mean, it is absolutely. I mean, if people are fine with, if people are fine with this paragraph, second paragraph that says approve 5 times, it's not for me to decide. I think it is stylistic in what we want to do.
Yeah, so I'll just chime in here a little bit. I remember in high school English class learning that it was best to have a variety of word choice, and then I get to the graduate level, undergrad level, and I heard the opposite. So I do think it is sort of a preference. I think it's the jury's out in terms of, from what I've understand, in terms of what's best or not. And so from my opinion, I think actually using the word concurrence or agree upon, you're like looking for words just to be different, not looking for the best use of a word, you know?
Right.
And it like concurrence versus approve, that could be even more confusing for a layperson reading this. So personally, I don't, you know, if you think a word's 5 times in a paragraph is too much, I'd be fine changing it a few times, but I don't necessarily have that stylistic preference. And if it's just stylistic alone and not in terms of content, I don't think we need to change it every single paragraph we see a word used multiple times. If anything, in documents related to like this type of stuff, the style is a little bit less important compared to if you were writing a literary narrative or something, you know, or some prose fiction. So I don't know. I don't have a strong preference for changing every single repeated word.
As I read it, when we change the words, I wonder what the difference is of the definition of that word, because we know that we're choosing our words carefully. So I would, if I were reading it, I'd look into it. It says the legislature agrees to other maps versus approves other maps. To me, that's a very different thing.
Okay.
Those are different definitions. As a reader, I would look into that. So I think we would most importantly want to be very clear on what we want that word to mean. Because I don't know if the legislature, I don't understand my things well enough to understand, is the legislature proposing the maps? Are they passing the maps? Are they drawing the maps? Like, what does the legislature actually do? Because certainly the legislature is not agreeing on it, right? They have a majority.
So if you
votes
look
on
at,
the map, like what is the logistics of that? For example, the biggest point is that we want to be clear on the definition. Second of all, Howard, I don't know what the legislature, how you would describe what the legislature actually does with the maps.
actually, that's why I looked at the constitutional language. I mean, I'm going to defer to Jack because he's the lawyer for the group, but for example, the word maps isn't even in there. The word maps isn't even in the constitutional section that I saw. Okay. So at some point, I think that it's fair, and I guess this is Jack's point, to make sure that people understand what actually happens. But when you start to look at these words to see if they are reflective of underlying intent, as opposed to just descriptive of what's going on, I think you've got a problem. And that would just be my opinion. I don't know that it's an important one. I don't think it's just literary. But for example, I actually think the legislature creates maps, because approves to me means it comes from someplace else and you say that's fine. The someplace else would be Michael Best and Friedrich, I guess.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's the sort of thing. But I mean, I want to be mindful of my role here. But I was just curious to see what the language was, because I thought when I saw Tony's question that I might be helpful by supplying him with the language that was used in the Constitution. And what I found in the language that I saw in the Constitution was that it was very scanty. Okay, it doesn't go into this level of detail at all. It doesn't talk about the governor.
Well, let's just
Well,
go back to it, and we're gonna not use this final paragraph probably. Let's go the second paragraph after the word revision. So this paragraph right here, the Wisconsin State Constitution calls for the state legislature to approve new redistricting maps after the United States Census is complete. That's what it said with Anne Marie. And Jack, I think it's accurate, correct? I mean,
I think it is too. Yes.
And what does that
I
mean,
mean-
Jack, by approve? What does that mean by approve, though?
The language here, the Constitution simply says that the legislature shall do reapportionment after the census is done. The Constitution says that, which is why the first statement says the Wisconsin Constitution calls for. After that, I don't personally take the language that this collaborative document has to mean that every line after that means the Constitution lays it out. For instance, it's case law that is my understanding that makes, actually, no, I'm sorry, I know that it's case law that makes it so the government or the governor has to sign the maps. The word approve is used because, frankly, Michael Beston Friedrich or somebody in a conference room there drew the maps last time. They approved them by their legislative process. They moved on to the governor, who was in agreement with them, who signed them last time. It's just a nice word that people kind of understand. If a lawyer wrote this paragraph, it might be 20 pages long. My understanding of this document was that it was to simplify the process in a way that made people understand essentially what was going to happen and doesn't lie to them. There's nothing, in my view, untrue about any of those sentences. While, I personally might quibble with some words over others. For instance, I don't really think the governor concurs or doesn't concur with legislation. I think he signs and approves of it or passes it, or, there's all sorts of words. But, you guys are the commissioners, and I want you to feel like you have the power to put the language in here that you want. And if I think it's patently false, I will tell you that. So, Susan, I apologize. I'm not sure I really answered directly what you asked me.
Well,
So
yeah, I just don't know, like,
that.
if philosophically, since the Constitution is not as explicit as it may appear the way it's written, it just feels that we are acknowledging, endorsing the role of the legislature beyond perhaps the role of the voice of the public or the governor or this commission. It's just this.
Well, I suppose the legislature, though, is the only party mentioned in the Constitution.
Understand.
So that's my concern. Of course they have a role here. They have to. In a perfect world, they would have given you guys the authority to listen to the people of Wisconsin, write maps, and have them passed, or something along the lines of the models you heard about in Iowa, for instance, which is my understanding of that Iowa process. And of course, I'm not Michael Lee. We have the slides that we can go back and look at, but is that's a legislatively created process that they have. And at the end of the day, the legislature passes the maps. So I think that the word approve here, for instance, acknowledges that the legislature has an immense amount of power here, but doesn't mean they're not without choice. They can either take maps drawn in a smoke-filled room at Michael Beston Friedrich, or maybe they could take the maps that come from this nonpartisan 9-member commission that's listened to the people. And so those are my thoughts. But they do have a very strong role here. And so we have to, I think you have to acknowledge that.
Of course.
One thing I would mention in this too is to keep the specificity as much as possible. And so I don't have a problem with approving their own maps instead, because either, other maps seems a little bit nebulous from my perspective. Either way, if they're drawn or if they're not, it's the representation of a map. And so, the legislator will decide to approve their own maps instead. It is very specific to that point.
So does the governor either sign or veto?
Yes.
The maps are then sent to the governor for either a signature or veto. If the governor does not sign the map sent by the legislature, the courts may become involved. So a couple things going on here. I sort of redid the last paragraph or that. So the Wisconsin State Constitution calls for the state legislature to approve new redistricting maps after the census is complete. The PMC will send maps to the legislature for consideration, but the legislature may instead decide to approve other maps. Those maps are then sent to the governor for either a signature or veto. If the governor does not sign would that, if the governor does not, or do we leave it as approve of the map sent by the legislature, the courts may become involved, and I want to change this to may become involved in the final drawing of the new maps. So we're looking at this last paragraph now.
You guys have anything specific?
Hi, this is Elizabeth. So I just have one change or one thought. For the PMC will decide their maps, will send their maps to the legislator for consideration. And instead of the word but, I prefer to see like however, comma, the legislator may decide to approve other maps.
Like that, Elizabeth?
Yes, and then delete the word instead.
Okay, so let's just, everybody read through it again here. Oops, sorry. Why didn't it like that?
You might need another comma after however.
However, the PMC will send their maps to the legislature for consideration. However, how about if we break that up into two sentences?
You could do that. It's fine.
PMC will send their maps to the legislature for consideration. Let me do that. I don't like all those commas.
Looks good to me after that.
May, however, decide. Is it, Elizabeth, does that work for you?
Yeah, that's fine.
You might not need the however there, I don't know.
Yeah.
The legislature may decide to approve other maps. If anything, I would probably put it in the beginning or just get rid of it entirely.
Yeah, I hear what you're
I
saying.
agree with-
Ben.
Yeah, I agree with that, Ben. Yeah.
Wisconsin State Constitution. I'm just reading it in my brain again. I guess I would ask Jack and others, is the last part of that correct? Where I changed it to the courts may become involved in the final drawing of the new maps. I like that better than saying the courts may become involved in approving new maps, but is it accurate?
I think that's a fair statement.
Okay. So overall, I personally like this last paragraph better than what we started with, but any other thoughts? And I don't mean to rush.
No, I think that's good, Tony. You guys have anything else to add to it or any takeaways?
Looks good.
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. Well, fortunately, there ain't as much. Okay. So what data are used to draw the lines? And then we have to go to this next. So I did change a little bit of the next two sections, but then I promise I didn't offer a lot of changes thereafter. So we're getting through it. So what data are used to draw the lines? The data from the United States 2020 census will be used. I didn't change that. I did change the next sentence to try to clarify it a bit. And I'll just read what I wrote. Data blocks from the census that show how many people are in each geographic area are given to the counties so that they can consolidate the block data and draw wards. The PMC will use the ward data to build the larger districts. And one PMC criterion is that the wards will not be split in drawing the larger district maps. I just felt that was a little clearer than what was previously said.
Comparing the two here, Tony.
What's that, Chris? I can't hear you.
I'm reading the two here. Just,
okay.
I'm trying to think about, how this fits in with Moon's initial information and like what we decide from there. Like, will what we write here go against what we decide later on? I guess I don't know what connection what Moon had said earlier has to do with this, if any.
yeah. Yeah, that
Wards are split, but we're not splitting the wards. So the districts may not be contiguous because the wards are not contiguous. But that doesn't mean we're splitting the wards. They can split.
Gotcha.
Is that something we should acknowledge, that the status quo, that the wards?
I do think we acknowledge that a little bit lower when we talk about the contiguity criteria. We're saying discontiguity is allowed when wards themselves are not contiguous.
Yep. I think that accounts for it. Yeah, Tony, that answers my question. That makes sense. So we're not splitting the wards. The wards are already split. And what we might have to do is have some discontinuity. You know what I'm trying to say? If the wards are already split. Yeah, okay. But we're not the ones splitting the wards. They've already been split.
Right. I mean, we could get very technical and try to explain that here, but I personally don't think we need to.
Yeah, no, I don't think this is the place to do it. At least this paragraph, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Sorry. So, wanted to show the question. What data are used to draw the lines?
I think it looks good. Otherwise, the revision.
So if no other comments. So this next one, I do want some discussion because I wanted to delete something Anne Marie said. So just to be fair, I want to have a comment. So the first sentence, the PMC, I didn't like the word blind. So I said the PMC will not, supposed to be used. The PMC will not use prior election results, party registration data, or other voter preference information while generating the district maps. And then the second sentence that she wrote, prior election data will be used after the maps are drawn to assess the competitiveness of the completed map. So in my view, we say this lower down when we talk about partisan fairness, And I think it's just confusing if we put it there. So my preference was to just delete that sentence. And so the answer to the question, will prior voting data be used to draw lines, would simply be the PNC will not use prior election results, party registration data, or other voter preference information while generating the district maps.
So my concern with that is if because the second aspect is what we're going to do during the process, right? Like we're going to blind ourselves to the data initially and then turn it on afterwards. So is removing that statement reducing some of the transparency that we'll be using in the process? That's my concern with it.
So I don't think we're using any of this information to generate maps. When the maps are drawn, we do use some of that information to choose maps.
Right.
I think there is a difference.
Yeah,
So
I hear the difference. I think from a transparency perspective, if I were to read, they're not going to use the data, I might I know you specified generating the district maps, and that's true. We're not going to use it to generate the maps, but we will use the data in some way along in the process. And that's
we say so down below.
Yeah.
We do.
And so
I think Anne Marie's point, and I think the point that we all want to make at some point, either in this document or whatever, is we're doing it differently. We are not using voter preference data to make our maps.
Yeah.
So, I definitely get it that it's in there. I'd like to see it in there.
Tony, could you say something, and I guess this is for the group, a second sentence that just says something about, like, referred to competitive section on competitiveness to learn, I don't know, something like refer to this other area to learn more about when we will use this data. I've not worded that perfectly right, but like, I don't know if that's necessary or not, but and then the only other thing, are we using the Oxford comma? If so, there should be a comma after party registration data.
Tony, is it possible to capture your intention by saying early on that the commission will not emphasize prior election results or rely on? I mean, I think you're not. I think the criticism may be apt to say that you're not going to use it is a little off. But what I think you're saying is that you're not going to rely on it. You're going to use it. You're going to use it later to test outcomes of using the other criteria.
Right. So I think what I'm hearing both of you say is maybe we do need to add something there to say essentially we're not using the data to generate maps, but we are using the data.
Is it possible, and I'm trying to capture what Ben was saying,
Sorry.
if you were to say at the top that you're not going to emphasize it, you could also say at the end of that first paragraph, see below, or see something below. I don't know exactly how to refer to what you're seeing below, but you can send people's eye down to the part where you are going to show how you are in fact going to use it. That's a common device. I mean, it's not a conversational way of speaking, but it's not an unusual way to look at a government. This is a governmental document. This is not, in the final analysis, it's a governmental document. So maybe you can just refer them explicitly to the place below where you're explaining how it will be used.
Right. So if we go to that, the partisan fairness. So as as summarized below, prior election results will be used after the maps are generated.
But isn't there the below, doesn't the below have a caption? What is this? The paragraph below starts out with a header, right?
When you say the paragraph below, what do you mean, Howard?
I mean the one that to which where you actually speak to how you use the data.
It's called partisan fairness.
Can't you just can't you just say see under partisan fairness below?
Even see group 4 partisan fairness. Yeah, someone like that.
Is I mean, I'll give up if what I'm suggesting to you is that you have to say something over again. You have to explain something that you then explain again below. I give up. But it's not unusual in my experience to just send people to something below, or just it essentially says you're not done reading about this yet.
So could we say see partisan fairness section below?
Period.
Yeah, that's fair.
I'll put that in there. I'm not happy with it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the one thing that does, Tony, if you just say see partisan fairness below, is that it then doesn't make it so that we state directly that we're using partisan data under this section, right? Which is what you want to avoid, because it is true, we're not using it to generate the maps.
Right.
This way, in this section, it says clearly we are not using partisan data to draw the maps, but we will use it later on. You're not even saying we're going to use it later on here. You're just referring to when we acknowledge when we'll use it below, which I think accomplishes.
Might we just change the question to say, will prior voting data be used? ? And then we can have two sentences, one that says we will not use it for drawing the line, second section saying we will use it as validation and test.
I think that's a good point.
Yeah.
That would work too, yeah. Although, yeah, that's fine.
I don't know, it feels like otherwise we're trying for people to read over the fact that we will use it, and it is valid and important for us to use later on, just as valid as it is not to use it early on in the drawing.
Yeah, and people who are really concerned about the competitiveness of the maps will likely want us to use it to make sure that they're more competitive than what they are now, right?
Susan, could you propose a second sentence there?
Sure, 1 second. Could we go down to the partisan fairness section? Perhaps we can just grab a similar.
I just changed it a little bit, the wording. I didn't change much about it. So here we are saying that election results will be used. So up above, we could say something similar.
Yeah, perhaps even just the same words, results from the last 5 years of statewide elections will be used to test and validate our criterion. Once maps have been drawn.
As or above, we could say as reviewed below, election results will be used in assessment of the partisan fairness criterion. Does that make sense?
What to compare partisan fairness?
Does everyone see what Jack has put into the chat?
No,
I didn't see it.
If you look at that,
I can't see the chat and get off of this, so I'd rather not.
Okay.
Somebody just wants to tell me. And
I'll read it to you.
Prior voting data will be, okay, yeah.
It says,
I like that too.
Once draft maps are complete, Prior voting data will be used to compare their partisan fairness. Okay. And I would just say that it may be, in order to fit it in the text, you want to precede that with the word however. You say they're not to use however once and so on.
Okay,
That may solve the problem, that language of Jack's. And I would say maybe preceded by the word however.
could you just read that one more time, Howard, please?
Sure. Jack wrote this: once draft maps are complete, comma.
Just a second.
Sure.
Okay,
Okay, once draft maps are complete, comma, prior voting data will be used
yeah,
to compare their partisan fairness. Or you might say to judge their partisan fairness, but he wrote compare their partisan fairness.
and then,
And that's it. That's what he's got. And then what I was saying is that maybe just to make it flow, once you insert that sentence, you might precede it with the word however. However, once, okay, and that's just a style point.
Yeah.
but then we might want to put in parentheses or something, C group for partisan fairness, or,
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fair. I like that.
so let's just read this revision again. I think we're getting there. Any other thoughts or concerns on that?
No, I like the way that it reads now. I think that kind of goes along with what we're going to be doing and promotes our transparency there. So I think it's perfect.
All right, the commissioners are okay with it. I was gonna ask Jack or other staff if they had any problem with it.
No problem. I thought that you brought up a good clarity point, Tony, and this is a good solution to it, frankly, I think.
Okay. Okay. So we'll just kind of go on, and fortunately I don't have, but other people might have some things to bring up. So we'll just go through this section by section now. Will new maps be based on existing district lines? No. The PNC will draw maps based on criteria outlined below. While the commission will consider existing political boundaries such as county and municipal lines, there will be no preference for plans that resemble the current enacted maps or those that favor any incumbent. So I'll wait for 5 seconds for any comments. What are the non-negotiable criteria that are used to draw the lines? Federal law requires that the district lines must comply with the Voting Rights Act. The Voting Rights Act exists to prevent state and localities from drawing districts that deny minority populations a chance to elect a candidate of their choice. The Wisconsin Constitution requires that each Senate district must contain 3 assembly districts, and districts must be contiguous, as compact as practicable, and respect other political boundaries to the extent possible. That too will be in the correct place, at the end here, but I'm not in love with the word practicable, but I wondered if that came from the Constitution itself or something.
I think that Anne Marie and I talked about it, and it did. while we're sitting here, I'll make sure and reread that provision. But I think the Constitution uses that term practicable. So that I can't imagine Anne Marie or I came up with using that. So let me just make sure I'm right about that. But
I was going to be impressed. You guys should have just gone with it.
I mean, we're not beholden to it, but I'm okay with it if that's what the Constitution said.
Yeah, I'm fine with it.
Any changes here? Otherwise, we'll move on. And like I said, I thought these were just well written, so I didn't change much. But so group 1, first order criteria, contiguity, talked about tonight. Is a traditional redistricting principle. Every part of a district is connected to every other part. A contiguity across water is allowed when there are community ties between the land areas. Discontiguity is allowed when wards themselves are not contiguous. I don't know why the computer underlined this. Does anybody know? But otherwise,
It's probably not a word in their dictionary.
well, now it will be.
Okay.
All right, no concerns. We'll move on to compactness, which is a traditional redistricting principle requiring districts be as compact as possible. Districts should look reasonable to the eye and will be scored mathematically using 3 scores. Preserve political boundaries. Counties, municipalities, wards will remain intact whenever possible. When comparing potential redistricting plans, the PNC will favor the plans that split municipality counties into few pieces as possible. Very well stated.
So one of the suggestions that that Ruben had was preserve political boundaries to preserve governing boundaries. That was his suggestion right before he signed off. I don't know what thoughts on that are.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. Is there a traditional or historical thing that it is political boundaries? I guess.
Anything tying us to that, you know?
Yeah, I think political boundaries is like from a government standpoint, like I think that's the appropriate word. I don't know if he was trying to avoid using the word political.
I think that was the intention from the way that it was written. So, but yeah, no, if that's the apropos term, then I feel that's what we should go with. But.
And yeah, Jack or someone else can chime in here, but like in government political science texts, they use political boundaries.
My concern, it's tough no matter what word you use here, because what you really mean is all these certain boundaries will remain intact, but we don't care about the current legislative boundaries, which are also governing our political boundaries. So I think it's kind of 6 of one, half dozen of the other. But like Ben said, I think political boundaries is the common term. So,
that's fine.
You know, it's up to you guys. I don't think you're going to look dumb if you do it the other way or be wrong, but
yeah, no, I think if it doesn't really get us much out of it, that's okay. I just wanted to answer it on its behalf. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I guess if there's it's not a big difference to change it, and it's what Ruben had suggested, it won't hurt, I guess. I don't know.
I just soon leave it.
Okay, that's fine too.
Yeah, I think we should probably just leave it.
Okay, so group 2, second order criterion, communities of interest. So this was beautifully written. I don't think I'm going to try to read the whole thing. Why don't we just read that paragraph? Okay.
Yeah, I think that's great.
Yeah, I've actually been utilizing that one the last week. So I get, yeah.
Yeah, I was just thinking I need to like print that off and just have it in my pocket.
Tattooed to my written out.
Okay, so I'm gonna go back up here to preserve political boundaries. I'm getting some outside suggestions from some important places. And the thought was the PMC will favor the plans that split municipal and county lines into a few pieces as possible. That actually may be more explanatory. Or do we like it the way it is?
I don't know, splitting county lines. Like, I don't know if that is like you don't split the county lines, you split the counties. Yeah, I don't know if the county lines would make sense.
All right, let's leave it.
I think
Let's
we
leave
should.
it.
Yeah.
Okay, so no comments on community of interest, so we'll move on to group 3, third order criterion, population deviation. Again, I won't read it. I didn't make any changes. Why don't we just read it ourselves, please?
I think that's great. We don't feel the need to include where the one person, one vote requirement comes from. From a legal perspective, I forget the case, Supreme Court case. We don't need to include that though, right? Okay, assume not.
Yeah, I don't have a strong opinion.
Yeah, it's a relatively like recent Supreme Court case, I think in the 70s or something, that had established that requirement. But I'm sure people will be fine without having to know that backstory.
So this criterion relates to the, oh wait, we do have a problem here. That of is out of place.
Who missed it?
I did, darn.
Come on, people.
Every one of us missed it. This criterion relates to the,
Yeah, one person, one vote. Yeah, I read right over that.
this criterion relates to the one person, one vote requirement. How about this criterion relates to the one person, one vote requirement of the Supreme Court?
No, I think it's okay. I think that,
Okay.
yeah, I think we're okay. I don't know. Yeah, that's
All right.
fine.
I did miss that, so we need to read these sentences. Okay. So PMC maps will attempt to have an equal number of people in each congressional district, not deviating by more than one person. All right. I don't see any other changes to that paragraph.
So when you do one person, one vote, you're going to have to hyphenate more than this and take that comma out, right? There's a hyphen between one and person. I don't know if you're going to put a hyphen between one and vote or between person and one. I think you got to figure the.
Oh, yeah. Let me look that up really quick.
But for sure, you're going to take the count. Well, maybe not. I don't know.
There's no hyphen in between one and person.
Okay.
So take out the hyphens?
Take out the hyphen.
Yeah.
Take out the hyphens, but leave the comma.
Right.
Yep. And that's Reynolds versus Sims. That's what I was referring to. That's the court case, but we don't have to include that. But that's the way it's written in the majority opinion.
Okay. So we did make some changes, so we'll just read it. Okay. So any other questions or changes on population deviation? So group 4, fourth order criterion. So we can read what Anne Marie wrote and then the revision. that I thought. Among plans satisfying higher priorities, a preference will be for plans that tend to lead to proportional outcomes, defined as the share of representation for each party roughly equal to statewide share of support. I didn't change that. This will be assessed using voting data from the last 5 years of statewide election. I don't like to use the word voting data myself. It sounds kind of partisan, which I know it is, but so.
I thought your words were clear, Tony.
Results from the last 5 years of statewide elections will be used in assessment of this criterion, was what I prefer.
Yeah, I think that means the same thing, but avoids using voting data. Looks good to me.
Okay. Any other comments? Okay, and then the competitiveness, I didn't change that, but we'll read it here. We have frequently heard from the public that non-competitive districts result in elected officials who listen and respond less to constituents, comma. So it would be preferable that the newly drawn maps offer more competitive districts. I'm okay with so there. So it would be preferable that the newly drawn maps offer more competitive districts. Fortunately, comma, the input both from prior redistricting cycles in Wisconsin and from present day map drawing experts is that competitiveness will increase naturally as a consequence of the way we prioritize criteria. The preference for proportionality in the partisan fairness criterion will further enhance competitiveness and election responsiveness. The People's Map Commission considers an increase in competitiveness to be an important outcome and benefit of our map drawing process. The only question that I might have is the use of the word consequence. Is that kind of too strong? Would we say competitiveness will increase naturally as a result of the way we prioritize? Or is consequence okay?
I think consequence is fine. I mean, it kind of points towards the levity of what we're doing, but that's not with me. I don't have any issue with it.
Yeah, when you look up the word consequence, that's what it says, results.
Yeah.
So, all right. But let me just pause there a minute. And any other comments on this paragraph, any sentences? All right. So how did the PMC decide on these criteria?
Sorry, Tony, I was still reading.
Oh, go ahead. Ben, just tell me when you're ready. Take your
Yeah,
time.
no, I think the election responsiveness, the preference for proportionality in the partisan fairness criterion will further enhance competitiveness and election responsiveness. I don't think election responsiveness is the right phrase there. I think we could just say responsiveness or electoral responsiveness, because this would be, the way it's written now is that people would be more responsive to elections, which isn't what we're trying to say here. I think we're saying that the electoral or the elected officials would be more responsive. No?
No, I mean,
No?
and I appreciate your question, but what my feeling was is that if we have more proportionality, the elections themselves are going to be more responsive
Okay.
to whatever the people are feeling. That's where I was coming from, but maybe it's not stated correctly or needs to be said.
No, if you're trying to say that the elections will be more responsive, I don't know what you mean by that, but
Okay.
that's what it says.
Okay. I mean, good point. Good point. I'm just rereading from the top. So maybe we just say the preference for proportionality in the partisan fairness criteria will further enhance competitiveness, period, because this paragraph is about competitiveness.
Yeah, that could work. Just getting rid of that.
Yeah. And then it goes right into the next sentence.
Right.
We're increasing competitiveness. That flows a lot better.
All right. So why don't we just reread that paragraph one more time and see if we're okay with it.
I hate to be a stickler. I don't know if we need the word naturally.
Okay.
In the second sentence, fortunately, the input both from prior redistricting cycles in Wisconsin and from present day map drawing experts is that competitiveness will increase as a consequence of the way we prioritize criteria. I just think that, like, this isn't a natural process, right? And like, it sounds like it's happening on its own. I don't know if we need that, so I would just have increase.
That's fair. Yeah.
Okay.
Otherwise, looks good to me.
Okay. All right. Any other comments on that paragraph? So, final question: how did the PMC decide on these criteria? Base these criteria on expert and public testimony gathered in the past 6 months. Okay, I'm gonna stop right there. Actually, just thinking about it tonight. This is gonna go on the website. People might read this summer, next fall.
Yeah, I think we should just put our date range in there.
Yeah. Let's read through the rest of it and then come back to that. In that time, the commission has participated in more. So we might want to, instead of say has, put the colon here. In that time, the commission, colon, participated in more than 20 hours of public hearings, heard from over 1,000 Wisconsinites, represented 65 counties and 245 municipalities, learned from 18 redistricting experts. We have periods. We didn't put a period behind any of these. Ben, the teacher, do we need periods behind these?
It has to be consistent through each one, whichever.
Yeah, it's a list, it looks like, right? It looks like that's a.
So we don't need periods?
If you include periods in one, include them in all the others. I'm not an English teacher though. But it looks like there's no.
Yeah.
There's no periods, so just remove all the periods in the list and you should be fine.
Okay. So learned from 18 redistricting experts from across the United States and Wisconsin. The outcome was clear. Wisconsinites want fair maps that do not benefit any political party. These criteria reflect all the commission has heard and will provide a transparent framework giving Wisconsin what it wants and deserves. Fair maps free from partisan bias. I mean, I'm okay with all that. I don't know if any commissioners are uncomfortable with more of an emotional statement like that. I'm okay with it, but, or if any of the staff feel like we're getting outside of our mission statement with that, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, we use the word deserves in there, right? So that's an interesting one. You know, maybe it will provide a transparent framework that Wisconsinites have told us they want.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Or something like that.
Yeah.
Again, just to make it more neutral on our part.
Yeah.
You know, Wisconsinites have told us that. They've told us in polls, they've told us in referendum, they've told us in our hearings.
Right.
We're not saying all Wisconsinites.
And will provide a transparent framework giving Wisconsin what they have told the PMC they want.
What they've expressed to the PMC,
What they have,
I think it's Wisconsinites. It's the people of Wisconsin. I think that it's important,
okay.
not the state with the capital S.
Okay, so giving Wisconsinites what they have expressed.
What they have told us they want. Simply.
Yeah.
So let me just reread that. The outcome is clear. Wisconsinites want fair maps that do not benefit any political party.
So now it's repetitive. Mhm.
These criteria reflect all the commission has heard.
Yeah, so now it's repetitive. Oh.
What, I'm sorry, what?
Well, now it's repetitive because we set it up on the front.
Right, I hear you, yeah. I'm sort of sensing that as well.
Wisconsinites want fair maps that do not. Well, maybe we just remove the sentence.
I was gonna.
I really think that's a very powerful sentence. The
Yeah.
outcome was clear. Wisconsinites want fair maps that do not benefit any political party, period. And
Or we can just say, giving Wisconsinites a fair map free from partisan bias. Like, that can just be it too. Because we've already expressed that they want fair maps and do not benefit any one political party.
We're getting close.
Um,
How about Wisconsinites want fair maps that are free from partisan bias, and these criteria will provide a transparent framework for that purpose, or something, or toward that goal.
what about just a period at the end of framework and get rid of that third line?
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah.
that works.
Yeah.
These criteria reflect all the commission has heard and will provide a transparent framework.
Maybe framework for, I don't know if you, maybe you do need something else there. Framework for,
To achieve that goal, or
Right,
right.
yeah.
to achieve this goal.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, look at the next sentence. I really think we might be able to get rid of that phrase because the next sentence says, we welcome input on how to best meet the criteria.
Oh, yeah. Well,
Or we could say welcomes continue input from,
Yeah,
from Wisconsinites, and then because the very last sentence is a hyperlink, right? And so we want to keep that one.
yeah, we need to keep the hyperlink because this is a hyperlink.
So we can just say, in the vein of this is a continuing process, the PMC welcomes continued input from Wisconsinites, or continued input, period. And then Wisconsinites should submit written comment or submit their own map here.
The PMC welcomes continued input. Yeah.
yeah, you could just send it there.
Yeah.
PMC welcomes continued input because then we tell them how to do it.
Right. Exactly.
But, okay, but then we need to go back up to this right here. The Wisconsinites want fair maps that do not benefit any political party. The chosen, the criteria above provide a transparent framework For the benefit I don't know, that doesn't. We need a new sentence there.
Like all the commissioners heard.
This is Elizabeth. I don't think you need a whole new sentence. I just think if you just at the end of transparent framework to develop maps or something like
Yeah,
that.
or a
I think
process
that's
or
all
something like
that's
that.
needed.
Yeah.
How
Can
about,
you just say a framework for drawing fair maps?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I was going to suggest that.
we'll provide a transparent framework to draw fair maps
Or drawing, yeah.
or drawing fair maps. But I was going to suggest the criteria documented in this document, which is not what I want to say, but something like that. The criteria,
The criteria above.
the criteria above reflect all the commission has heard and will provide a transparent framework for drawing fair maps. The criteria.
I don't, it's not the criteria, it's your approach to the criteria that's going to do that. I really have a sense that you're overwriting, if I may say so.
Nah, we're getting close, Howard.
Yeah, I think it's, I don't think you're providing any new information anymore.
Right, I know. I'm just
Yeah,
trying to
that's
respect
fair.
what Anne Marie did. Well,
Why don't we just get rid of that whole paragraph and just end with the PMC welcomes continued input?
okay. So if we start with the question, how do we decide on these criteria? And we explained how we decided on the criteria with the hearings, the comments, the experts. Yeah, I think that works, Ben. The PMC welcomes continued input and submit it here. Yeah, I think, and that takes out that emotional thing too.
Yeah, then we're not editorializing.
Right.
That
Should I
works.
try that?
Right out.
Here, what I'll do is
You could do the correction. Yeah.
cut it and put it down here so I don't lose it. Yeah, actually, I think that works pretty good. It removes a problem, like you said, Ben, and yeah.
And then Tony, for that first sentence, for the past 6 months,
Oh, yes, thank you.
Jack had suggested since its formation in September 2020.
The basic criteria is gathered since formation,
Since its formation in September 2020.
since its formation in 2020.
September 2020. We've been doing this work for a while now, folks.
Yeah. All right. Do we like that? So what I want to do, I want to take 2 minutes to go back to the top and make sure I delete out what we don't need. Because then I'm going to save this and send it to who? Jack, who wants this, or Maddie?
I would love it. And yeah, if we could clean it up, this evening, that'd be excellent, because with the work and records page, I forgot to mention this at the top, this is going to appear on it, and I'm going to put a big watermark draft, because my understanding is that there's going to be a vote at the next public hearing. So yes, if you could clean it up and send it to me tonight, that'd be great.
Yeah.
So
And it'll be
that-
on the website tomorrow morning.
Okay, so that's Maddie. So Maddie, I'm going to clean it up here, and then I'm going to save it, and then I'm going to send it by email to you.
That'd be
Right.
great. Thank you. Yeah. In a Word doc, because if you don't mind, because I'm going to put it on a header and everything like that.
Well, yeah, I took away all the headers and I took away the map, so you got to put all that back in.
Yep.
Page numbers.
Will do.
Okay, so let's go back up to the top and make sure I do it right.
And then make sure you change the font to Comic Sans. No, I'm kidding.
What's that, Ben?
No, I was kidding. It was a joke. Never mind.
Oh, okay.
Ring bats.
So, so we're getting rid of this paragraph because we're going with the revised paragraph.
Yep.
That's scary. Okay, and I'm gonna get rid of this question. And then under the maps or the current maps used in the election, that was where those maps were. So when is redistricting done? We changed it to this sentence, so I'm gonna get rid of this. Okay. So I revised the first sentence because we needed to say redistricting experts and we had to put an as in there, so this goes away. And then we changed, excuse me, I'm gonna take out this question. And then I'm glad we're doing this because I think we went with the last paragraph here.
Yeah, we did.
Howard, did you have something to say?
Well, no, there were, remember, I think, unless Jack resolved this already, I think there was an open question about whether the word was practicable, and I'm pretty sure it is.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
That's down lower.
Okay.
Well, just to answer it now, it is. So, yeah.
Jack, you taught me that I've been using the word practical wrong for a long my whole life, actually.
At least according to the drafters of that provision in 1848 or whenever it was written.
Well, no, it turns out practicable means feasible or possible, and practical doesn't. And so I just looked it up. Apparently,
Our forefathers taught us both then. So,
Okay, so what I'm gonna do is read this paragraph again. And if we like it, I'm gonna get rid of this. So Wisconsin State Constitution calls for state legislature to approve new redistricting maps after the United States Census is complete. The PMC will send their maps to the legislature for consideration. The legislature may decide to approve other maps. Those maps are then sent to the governor for either a signature or veto. If the governor does not approve of the maps sent by the legislature, the courts may become involved in the final drawing of the new maps. Anybody have a problem with that?
No.
Okay, so that's in there. So what data are used? Again, we made a bit of a change. So I'm going to get rid of this. And I'm sorry, let me just to be complete, I'm going to get rid of the word revision where I used it. Okay. And then will prior voting data be used? We didn't like that word line, so we're getting rid of that right there, and we're getting rid of this revision. Once draft maps are complete, prior voting data will be used to compare their partisan fairness. See group 4 partisan fairness below. I'll stop there for 2 seconds.
I think you should.
What's that?
I think you should italicize or put it in quotes, group 4 partisan fairness, because it's like a title of a section. I think
So the whole thing, group 4 partisan fairness, or what do you?
Yeah, group 4 partisan fairness should just be in quotes. I'm pretty
Just a
sure.
reference to it, yeah.
Quotes or underlined, or what do you want me to do?
Quotes.
So quotation marks?
Yeah.
I agree. That sets it off a little better too. Okay. So we didn't change these following questions. We didn't change anything through here. The next change was under partisan fairness. We didn't change the first sentence, but we changed the second sentence. Results from the last 5 years of statewide, and you guys were okay with that. So all right. And then we didn't change anything here, but And all right, I believe I'm okay with it. Does anybody else have any comments?
Yeah, nothing. Looks good to me.
All right, then I won't do it yet. I'll go through it one more time, but then I'll do what I said. I'll send it to Maddie. So I think we were done with that, Chair Ford.
Awesome.
Thank you for facilitating that, Tony.
Yeah, absolutely, man.
Took a while.
Well, that's important, right? Yeah. So, yeah.
Yeah.
So with that, I don't have any new business. Anyone has any questions or anything like that before we go ahead and wrap things up here? I don't see anything. I'm clicking through everybody's tiny head on the side of my computer here. So,
Does anybody else want to share? I think I'm still sharing.
All right, guys. Well, be sure that you fill out that doodle for our week of April 2nd, and we'll try to get everybody on the books here, and we'll go from there. But good to see everybody. Thank you guys for coming out.
All right, thank you.
Well,
Have a good